Hello, parents, and welcome to tonight's town hall meeting. I'm Valerie Abrahamian with Advocates for Angels, and every Wednesday night I have a town hall meeting at 5 o'clock Pacific time to inform parents about their rights and the latest updates on virtual schooling. So I have some questions that parents have submitted for me to answer tonight. And I also have some updates on what's going on. So we'll start out with those things, and then I'm going to open it up to additional questions from the attendees that are on tonight's live Zoom town hall meeting. So, right now, it appears that school districts many are still not decided, still have not announced what they're going to do in the fall. In terms of our local, because I'm in Southern California, so in terms of Corona Norco Unified School District, the superintendent, he first announced that they were not going to open until at least 4 weeks after the beginning of the new school year. And then just 1 week later, he announced that they were going to, He first announced that they were not going to open till 4 weeks. Then a week later, he announced that they were going to fully open with no hybrid schedule and just fully open. So within 1 week, he flip-flopped from not opening to opening with full schedule. So it just is an example of how they really have not decided yet. Now, in terms of this specific school district, there's a lot of politics going on there in terms of the teachers union and him not training teachers appropriately, which is a big issue for all districts. Because if the superintendent in a specific district is not training their district teachers and administrators appropriately in terms of the guidelines for distance learning that's come down from the Secretary DeVos, the Secretary of Education, the United States Congress, if the superintendents are not implementing sufficient training to the teachers are not going to be supported, and they're not going to be able to provide an equitable distance learning plan. So there's a lot of things going on in this whole situation. The supers not making decisions on what they're going to do yet, not informing parents of what they're going to do yet, the flip-flopping that's going on, the indecisiveness, the problems with the teachers union, the problems with not training teachers properly. So either way, in this particular school district and in a lot of sister neighboring school districts, they are not training the teachers appropriately. So it looks like that when we open, we know that most school districts are not going to open with a full schedule. They're going to open with a hybrid schedule, which means that their kids are going to go to school half of the time, and the other half of the time they will remain in distance learning, or they're not going to open at all, and it's going to be a full distance learning model. So either way, teachers need to be trained and teachers need to be supported. Otherwise, it's going to look just like it did in March, April, May, and June of last year. So this is what we're facing, parents. We're facing the same situation as we did last year, which means our kids are not going to receive an education for a full school year. And then it looks like it might increase if schools remain closed or we remain in a hybrid model with distance learning. So this is extremely concerning. And parents, if you don't learn what your rights are, what the guidelines are, how to hold your school district accountable, your child is not going to receive an equitable distance learning plan, is going to continue to lose skills. Your IEP is going to continue to be violated, and your child's not going to receive their services. You're not going to receive academic instruction from your teachers. So it's so important of any time in your child's history of education on an IEP for you to learn how to advocate for your child. This is crucial that parents learn how to find their voice and learn what their rights are and learn how to advocate, because otherwise your child is not going to receive an education. So I mentioned the two options, one being the hybrid schedule and the other being a full distance learning plan. So if they open partially, it's going to be half in school, half distance learning. If they don't open, it's going to be a full distance learning plan. So let's talk about the hybrid schedule first. So in the hybrid schedule, they are going to require that our kids wear masks the entire time they're at school, from the time they get out of the car till the time that they get back in the car with you, or their ride, or the bus. They're going to have to wear masks. Okay. What is that going to look like? How are children with autism going to be required to wear a mask? Now, recently, there was a guideline that came down from the CDC that stated that children with disabilities won't be required to wear masks if they're not capable of wearing a mask. So that was a really good thing. I posted that on both of my Facebook page as well as my group page, that came down from the CDC. So that's a guideline right there for you parents, that if you are a parent that's extremely concerned that your child can't wear a mask right now, you do have the right to say there's a guideline. Now, it's not a mandate, it's not a law, but guess what, you guys? It's not a law that we have to wear a mask in the first place. So it's just a guideline, a recommendation by the CDC. By the way, I have my essentials hat on tonight because our kids are essential. And that's why I have my essential hat on, because our kids are being minimalized. Their education is being minimalized. Their rights are being minimalized. And that's why I have my essential hat on tonight. So back to the masks. So if you are a parent who's concerned about that, you do have a right to say, I am requesting that the guidelines for my child to be exempt or waived from wearing a mask, I'm requesting that that be put into place for my child. That's my first big tip of the day for tonight. Number two, when they walk in the door, they're going to have their temperature taken. Every child's going to have their temperature taken. Number three, they're going to have to social distance, and they're going to have to be 6 feet apart. When they go into class, the desks are going to be placed 6 feet apart. They're going to, some school districts, now not all, but some school districts are going to implement that kids will not be able to go to lunch or go to recess, because how are they going to enforce 6 feet apart social distancing at lunch or recess? You can just imagine that, right? So that's why a lot of districts are deciding they're not going to go to lunch and recess. They're going to stay in the classroom where teachers can enforce the 6 feet apart social distancing requirement. They're going to require washing hands on a very specific and enforced schedule. Now, this is a new thing that has just been announced in Ohio. The governor of Ohio is enforcing that every child is going to have to, when they walk in the door and they get their temperature taken, they're going to have to put on a bracelet, which is a tracking bracelet. He is going to track the students in school. And if you want your child to attend the school grounds, your child is going to have to wear a tracking bracelet. So now our children are going to be tracked, because he's going to be overseeing, and they're going to be managing and taking data on the kids that comply with the distance learning and the requirements, or the kids that don't comply. Now, what are they going to do with the kids that don't comply? I don't know, but this is extremely concerning when you think about the rights of your child being impeded upon, and they're being surveilled by a tracking system. Now, this is happening in Ohio. It's the first state that I've heard of this. I did post also on my Facebook page, my Advocates for Angels page, as well as my Special Ed Parent Empowerment Network group, private group page. If you haven't joined that yet, please do. If you're a parent of a child on an IEP, it's a private page just for parents. I posted the video from Dr. Popper, who is she's in Ohio, and she did a video talking about the insane totalitarian regime that they are enforcing in Ohio on our kids in order to go back to the school building. I'm just as concerned as she is. That's why I'm saying this. That's why I posted that video. I recommend you all go look at that video. It's extremely concerning and something for us to think about, because look, if it's happening in Ohio, how many other states are going to start enforcing that and requiring that as well? Scary thought. So that is the hybrid model. So the other question is, which also Dr. Popper brought up, and which many of the mental health organizations are talking about right now, is what is going to be the social and emotional and mental health ramifications for our children in this kind of a totalitarian regime enforcement model. What is that going to do to our kids, our young kids, even kids in any child in school? When you think about special needs kids, how are they going to take in and internalize the fact that they have to wear masks every day? They can't get close to their friends. They have to social distance 6 feet apart. How are they going to enforce that? You know, if you think, how are they going to enforce that? What about the kids that don't comply? How are they going to enforce it? How are they going to reprimand those kids that don't comply? How are the teachers going to teach with masks on? You know, how is that going to happen when a child can't see a teacher's face, or a teacher can't see a child's face? You can't see their mouth talking. You can't see the expression on their face. How are children going to learn social, reading social cues on faces, reading body language, reading our emotions on our face? You know, when you think about these things, how are children that have speech and language and communication disorders, that's going to affect their ability to progress and to be able to learn social skills and the socialization of peers and interacting with peers. It's going to impede that. How are kids going to answer questions or communicate in a group model, in small groups, when they have discussions or when they have group projects and kids interact in a group and work together in a group? They have masks on. You know, that's going to impede their learning ability. How will children socialize or communicate with a mask on? So those are some of the questions that we need to think about in going back to school with these kinds of rules and enforcements that they're going to require for our kids. Okay, so that's the hybrid model. If we go back to school, that's that option. So now the second option is the distance learning option, which will be full distance learning. So as I said, we're looking at most districts failing to provide appropriate support to teachers in training them and giving them the support they need to provide an equitable distance learning plan. So most likely, like I said, it's going to look like it did in March, April, May, and June, which is very discouraging and disheartening because we know that was a mess and it didn't work. It's also going to, of course, continue to be the same situation where our IEPs were not implemented because they weren't implemented in March, April, May, and June. Many parents didn't get the services that were on the child's IEP. We didn't get academic instruction that was on your child's IEP. If you have SAI instruction, specialized academic instruction by a special ed teacher, or even your general ed teacher, if your teachers did not get online and teach virtual classes, you didn't receive your academic instruction for, especially in terms of the special ed SAI academic instruction that's on your IEP, and it says a certain amount of minutes, you didn't receive that. That's non-implementation of the IEP. If you didn't get your services, that's non-implementation of the IEP. If your child's goals and objectives weren't worked on, that's non-implementation of your IEP. Because again, if you think about, if you just received a list of websites, links, resources to go to, and you had to teach your child, where were the goals embedded in those links and lists of websites? They weren't, because your IEP is an individualized plan for your child's, to meet your child's unique learning needs. So that was not individualized. Again, non-implementation of the IEP. So again, 1 year of lost education for our kids. If it continues next school year, it's going to be more than 1 school year. So those are the 2 options, parents, that we are looking at for the fall. That is just so concerning to me, because IDEA is at risk. Our child's education is at risk. Again, if any time that is most important for you to learn how to advocate, now is the time for you to learn how to advocate. IDA remains in effect. There is no excuse. There's no excuse is valid in not having your child's IEP implemented. So, you know, they're giving these excuses though, and parents are buying it. So, you know, I get lots of questions from parents saying, well, my district said that because schools are closed, they can't do this or they can't do that. No excuse is valid. IDEA remains in effect. IDEA has not been waived. Secretary DeVos did not say, okay, the school districts don't have to implement IEPs anymore because we're in distance learning. That's not what she said. She said just the opposite. She said that school districts and parents need to collaborate and work together creatively in order to remain having the IEP implemented to the maximum extent possible. Okay, so of course it's going to look differently because it's going to be a virtual model and not an in-school, in-person model. That's the only thing that's going to look different, parents, is it's going to be virtual. That's it. Okay, nothing else should be different. You should not decrease your services. You should not change anything on your IEP because we're in a distance learning model. The only thing that should be changed is we're going from a school model to a home virtual model. That's it. Nothing else should be changed. Okay, if you're allowing them to write what they're calling a distance learning IEP, and they're changing your services, they're changing your SAI time from your special ed teachers, they're changing anything on your IEP, they're saying goals can't be worked on or accommodations can't be provided or anything like that. Do not agree to that, do not sign that, because IDEA remains in effect and your child still deserves and they are obligated to implement your child's IEP, okay? So, timelines also continue to remain in effect. So every timeline, when you ask for an IEP meeting, 30 days in California is the timeline for when a parent asks for an IEP meeting in writing. Within 30 days, the district has to provide you that IEP and hold that IEP within 30 days, okay? All other timelines too, assessments, PWN, every other timeline remains in effect. Now the 30-day thing, if you guys are out of state, California, You might have different timelines, so check what your timeline is in your state, but timelines remain in effect. The only thing that's been given flexibility are the assessment timelines. Now, it doesn't say they don't have to assess anymore. That's not what it says. It says that because it is more difficult now for assessments to take place, because they can't do it in person, they have to do it virtually, they're offering flexibility on the timelines, meaning it can go over. So in California, there's a 60-day timeline for assessment. So they're offering flexibility that they can go a little bit past that timeline. That doesn't mean 4 months past or 6 months past. It means flexibility within a reasonable amount of time, because it's going to take a little longer, possibly because of the virtual model. So please don't, don't let them say, because I know a lot of school districts are saying, oh, we're not doing assessments now because schools are closed. So assessments are waived, parents. Where I've seen PWNs, prior written notices, sent to parents saying, we're not doing assessments at this time because schools are closed, or we're not holding IEPs now because schools are closed. Nope. That is not correct. That's a violation of IDEA. They have to provide an IEP meeting for you. They have to do assessments. The only thing that is changed, like I said, is there's some flexibility in the assessment timeline. That's it. Okay, so parents, keep a log of all your services and your instructional time that you have received and that you have not received. So write down, this is what I got, and this is what the IEP says. That means the district owes me 25 hours of speech and language that I didn't get, because this is what my IEP says, and this is what I got. And I didn't get 25 hours of speech or OT, or I have 5 hours a week of special ed time where my kid goes to this RSP classroom, to a special ed class, 1 hour a day, 5 hours a week. I never saw my special ed teacher the whole time. So you add up 5 hours a week of the time school closed to the day that school ended, and you're owed that amount of instructional time from the special ed teacher. They owe you that because that's a violation of the IEP. So start making a log, start writing these things down, because if you don't hold your school district accountable to making sure that those things are made up, they're not just going to offer it to you to make it up. They're just going to forget all about it and say, oh, phew, that parent didn't ask us to make it up, so we don't have to. They're not going to just offer it to you, parents. It's up to you to hold them accountable, to write letters and to say, I expect this to be made up. You owe me this, this, and this, because during this time and this time, I didn't get it. Okay. Now, when you write your letter, so, it's hard for me to go over every little thing in these. I try to give you guys as much information as I can, but the letter that I'm talking about, so in my monthly parent membership, the Parent Brigade membership, this is what I'm working on with parents. I'm teaching parents how to write that letter to the school district to ask for compensatory services and education. I'm teaching them how to do it. We have a form letter. I help them write their letter. They take the form letter I write, and then they write their own letter, and then they show it to me, and then I help them to amend it or add to it or help them word it better. I give them the logs that they can utilize, a script of things to say, words to say, how to hold your district accountable, how to prepare for your virtual IEP meetings by writing a parent agenda prior to the meeting. So you can write all the things that you're concerned about, what you're requesting for next school year in the fall, that this is what happened with distance learning last year. And this year for distance learning, this is what I expect to happen. Because you have rights, parents, and you have rights to hold them accountable to making sure your child does not experience what we did in March, April, May, and June. If you don't do these things, it's not going to happen, because all the parents, you got to think about this, guys. So think about all the services they didn't give in March, April, May, and June. Think about how many thousands of hours of services that was, even per district. So say like in Corona Norco Unified School District, there's 7,500 kids on an IEP. They didn't give services for the first 2 months, like all of March and into April, and they didn't hold IEP meetings till the last 2 weeks of school. So think about how many IEPs that they owe parents. Thousands of IEPs. So they're not going to make it up unless you make sure they do, by making these requests, by writing these letters, by requesting IEP meetings, by writing parent agendas. If things aren't documented and requested properly, they're going to just waive those parents that didn't make the request, and they're going to go, oh, good, those parents didn't ask for it. Now, these parents over here that are advocating, that are writing written requests, we got to deal with them. But the 90% of the parents that don't know how to do that and aren't going to do that, they get off the hook with those parents. They don't have to do anything. And they'll just move forward next school year doing the same damn thing because parents aren't going to hold them accountable. So these are the things that I'm trying to teach parents, that you have rights, you can hold them accountable. They have to continue to implement your child's IEP and educate your child. So again, I just want to go back to that distance learning IEP that a lot of districts are doing. So sometimes districts are even writing these IEPs, which they're calling an amendment, and they're writing it themselves, and they're just sending it to the parent through email and saying, oh, parent, here's your distance learning IEP. Please just sign it and send it back. Because we have to write that because schools are closed right now. So in order for your child to continue to get your IEP, you need to sign that. And parents are believing it and signing it and sending it back, not understanding what it is. So if you don't look at that amendment and you make sure that they did not decrease anything, take anything away, change anything on your child's IEP, except for the fact that school buildings are closed, so now we're doing it virtually. If that's all it says, okay, great. That's fine. But if they change anything on your IEP, that is not fine. They shouldn't change anything just because school buildings are closed, because they can do it virtually. So this can be done. It's being done all over the nation. School districts are learning how to do this. Yes, it's not easy. It's difficult. Teachers are in a very precarious position because they're not supporting them with training, but yet that's that district's problem. That's that superintendent's problem for not training the teachers properly. That's not your problem or your child's problem. Your child gets to get educated and gets their IEP. So make sure that you know what you're signing and be very careful with not signing a distance learning IEP that's going to diminish your child's services or education time, okay? Okay, so, and you guys, if you have questions, write it down, because I'm going to take questions after I'm done giving this little talk that I have prepared for you. So make sure that you write down questions and anything I just talked about. Okay, so now there's been a lot of questions. These are the questions that parents gave me prior to tonight. So if you have a question you want me to answer on the town halls, please go ahead and ask me those questions. You can do that either on my Facebook page, the Parent Empowerment Network Facebook page, or that's the group private page, or you can do it on my Advocates for Angels page. But I do actually have a questionnaire that goes with the town hall meeting that you can also ask a question on that page. So I'm getting a lot of questions about compensation for lost wages because you have to stay home with your child. So if you're a parent that works and you have to go outside of your home and no one's home to take care of your child, no one's there to sit next to your child to help, because you've become the teacher, right? Parents have become the teacher, parents have become the speech and language path, the OT, the ABA provider, behavioralist, everything else. And so most kids are not independent to sit there and do virtual schooling unless an adult's sitting next to them. Most kids on an IEP cannot do that. A very small percentage of kids have the ability to be independent and do virtual schooling on IEPs. Not many. General ed kids have been able to transition and adapt much better because they're general ed kids. Our kids on IEPs, they need assistance. They need prompting. They need someone explaining things to them. They need help with technology. They need all the things that our kids need. So an adult has to sit there. So how as a parent, even if a parent's working in the home, how is that going to happen? So many parents have told me, I've had to quit my job, or I've had to take a leave, or I've lost wages. This has had a huge financial impact on my family. And yes, of course it has, on many, many families. So there's 3 options for those parents, okay? And those are, there's the COVID-19 relief bill. There is the regional center, if your child is a member, a client of the regional center. And then there's also a school district option. So there's 3 options that I'm going to go over with you right now. Okay. So the first one is the COVID-19 relief bill option. So as of April 6th, the House passed the COVID-19 relief bill that helps people with disabilities, families, and their support staff. So the stimulus bill signed by President Donald Trump in March includes a temporary expansion of paid leave for workers in some circumstances. The provision was intended to address the needs of employees across the country who are unable to come to work or telecommute because they must care for their children while schools and other child care providers are closed. So there is a stimulus package that covers that. So it's the Department of Labor determined that the definition of a son or daughter for the new program should be consistent with that of the existing Family and Medical Leave Act, which expressly includes children 18 years or older and incapable of self-care because of a mental or physical disability. So it not only covers school-aged children, but it also covers adult children with disabilities 18 and over. So parents, you have the right to ask for that stimulus bill for paid time off. The bill ensures that all family members, including siblings and grandparents, can be there for their loved ones with disabilities. So that is through the COVID-19 relief bill, and it's through the Labor Department. Okay, so just look up COVID-19 relief bill in terms of the disabilities, compensation for lost wages for children with disabilities. Okay, and you can request that. Okay, this next option is the regional center. If your child is a client of the regional center, you can call up your regional center case carrier and you can request an increase in your respite. Okay, I got that for my adult daughter and I got an increase in my respite. So that's also, helps out with the fact that you can't go to work or that you're at home working and your hours have been cut because you can't work the normal hours because you have to sit with your child in order for them to be educated. So that's another way to supplement your income is through the regional center, ask for an increase in your respite hours. And then the other one is that you can, advocates and attorneys from across the nation are lobbying Congress to have school districts increase their stimulus for federal and state for parents to cover home child care costs or lost pay while children are in school. Learning in home. While children are learning in the home, as long as children are at home, can't go to school, they are lobbying that the districts be provided funding to give to parents that have to stay home with their kids. So now that hasn't been passed yet, but they're lobbying it for it to be passed. So what I'm saying is, the more that parents ask their school districts, hey, school district, I want you to request that the state offer the federal and state stimulus for us to cover home childcare costs or our lost pay while our kids have to be home in distance learning. So you can make that request, because every parent that makes that request is going to put pressure on the state and the feds to give more stimulus to the districts. Okay, so those are the three options for lost pay and childcare. Okay, so now I got a couple other questions from parents. This one was, I'm just going to read it. I'm in this educational lawsuit against a certain school district and went to mediation and settled, but I have not signed the settlement yet. I got an IEE for outside provider. I didn't request for a list of the district providers. I didn't know I could get one. So I'm trying to ask for one just to make sure the provider my lawyer suggested wasn't on it. They said I can't have the list because it's confidential and my settlement hasn't gone through yet. Till then, I can't request for it. Is that true? I feel like I'm getting the runaround or getting screwed because people said that the IEE provider is contracted with the district and is on the list of providers, but they won't show me. Please advise. Okay, so there's several things in there going on. So first of all, getting your IEE provider list from your school district has absolutely nothing to do if you're in a lawsuit or a settlement agreement or a mediation or anything. They have to provide you with the IEE list. That's ridiculous that they're telling you we can't provide it for you because you're in the middle of a settlement agreement. No. And I can't believe that if you have a lawyer, that they're not saying that too and demanding the list. The second thing is that even if the provider, the IEE provider that you're requesting is not on that list, that doesn't matter because you have the right to request anybody you want to, okay? And if they're not on the list, you have the right to say, if my provider isn't on the list, I'm requesting school district that this person be approved to be on your provider list. And if that person has a non-public agency license, because all IEE providers must have an NPA license, a non-public agency license, in order to provide assessments to school districts. If they have an NPA, that's the first thing you need to ask them. If they've been doing assessments, obviously do, then the school district can approve them to be on the list, okay? All that happens is if they haven't been approved and they're not on the list as a provider, they take that IE provider's VITA and all their their experience, what they've done, how long they've been doing assessments, blah, blah, blah. And they take that to the school board and they say, school board, we're asking for this new IE provider to be approved and be on our provider list. And the school board looks at it, and if they approve, if they meet all the qualifications, okay, boom, yes, we approve. That's all that happens. So it can take up to a couple weeks, maybe shouldn't take more than 3 weeks, because usually school board meetings happen every 2 weeks. So you go to the school, they go to the school board, they ask, they get it approved, and boom, they're on the list. You have the right to do that, parents, okay? That's that. And then, what was the other thing she was asking? I guess that was it. Yeah, so yeah, parents. I know the other thing I wanted to say. I don't even care who's on the list, and I don't look at the list, and this is why. Because you got to think about this. Their list that they have, that they provide to parents, are the providers that they want you to pick. They want you to pick the people off their list. And can you guess why? Because those IEE providers are the providers that will go with the district's agenda, okay? Because certain IEE providers are not ethical. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to skew the assessment to say and look just like what the district assessment said. So we're basically going to get a carbon copy of what the district assessment said, because that IE provider wants to keep their contract, and they're getting paid a lot of money to do assessments by the district, because the district, they look at the district assessment and they go with the district, what the district agenda is. And you'll just get the same old thing that you just got before. So I don't trust the list. Sometimes they are contracted with many other providers that aren't on the list. Those other providers are the providers that don't care if the school district likes them or not. They're not going to go along with the agenda of the district. They're going to give you a valid and true, accurate, complete, comprehensive IEE that you need. They're going to make appropriate recommendations. They're going to write goals. They're going to write accommodations, and they're going to write appropriate level of service provision. Because if you have looked at your different assessments, the school district assessments never say at the end, I am recommending that this child receive, say if it's a speech and language assessment, I'm recommending this child receive 2 hours a week of speech and language. And here's the goals. I've written 6 speech and language goals for this child. And here's 6 accommodations that I recommend for this child as well. They don't ever do that. They don't make recommendations for services. They might make some recommendations for accommodations, but it won't say, I recommend these accommodations be adopted into the IEP. They'll just say, these are some suggestions I have for this child that might help them to learn, okay? They're suggestions. It looks very, very different than when you get an IEE from an ethical and true IEE provider that's independent and does not care about a district agenda, where they write very clear recommendations on clear level of service provision, very specific goals and objectives that are determined based off of the assessment they just did. So when you do an assessment, parents, and you get all of those standardized test scores that show all the deficit areas for your child, the law says that every area of deficit that your child is identified with, there has to be a goal to address that deficit area, okay? So, but district's assessments don't address deficit areas with goals, because they say, well, that's up to the IEP team to do. So are the rest of your IEP team providers, are they speech and language pathologists? They don't know how to write speech and language goals. But who does? Your speech and language district person, who is not going to want to write goals, because the more goals they write, the more they have to work and the more time they have to provide to see your child. So they always diminish goals. They'll write as little amount of goals as they possibly can. They don't write specific and measurable goals, because if they write generalized goals, then they're not accountable to meeting them, because they're generalized. You can't measure it anyway. So it's very subjective, right? So that's why it's so important to make sure, that's the whole purpose of getting an IEE by a real provider, is that a private provider, independent provider, is that they know how to write very specific, very measurable goals in all areas of your child's deficits based off of that assessment and those findings. Okay, so that should answer that question. Okay, so again, parents, if you have questions, make sure you ask me for the town hall meeting, and I'd be happy to answer them. So does anyone have any questions or comments about anyone have an announcement that about your school opening, or what option they're choosing, or any questions about any of the information that I just gave you? I'd be happy to answer for you.
Valerie, I just want to make a comment.
Sure.
Um, I know a lot of parents always feel sorry for the teachers or for the district, and you feel bad. Oh, the teacher, oh, they probably did the best they could with what they have.
Yeah.
Don't ever put that in your head. Always remember your child is first. And
Mhm.
don't worry, don't care about the teacher, don't care about the district, don't care who you're hurting, whose feelings you're hurting. It's always remember it's about your child, and your child comes first.
Yeah. And that's coming from a teacher.
Yeah,
Liz is a teacher. She's
yeah,
an educator. So that means a lot coming from you, Liz.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
even tell parents, yeah, hey, don't hurt me. You're not hurting my feelings. You fight for your child, and if I don't ever feel that you don't ever feel you're getting in my way. Because I support you 100%. And so you do what you have to do, and don't ever think about me.
mhm.
So just remember that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. It is too bad that they're not supporting the teachers and training the teachers. But like I said, that's not your problem or your child's problem. That's that school district's issue. That the administrators are not addressing this whole situation appropriately. They got billions of dollars. The nation school districts were given billions of dollars from the stimulus package to schools to train the teachers. So what the heck are they doing with all that money that they got to train the teachers and to provide technology, appropriate technology for our kids, to provide every child in an IEP with a device? Every child in an IEP should have gotten a device of their own. And if you didn't get a device, parents, you better get your device. They also are required to make sure that everyone has accessible Wi-Fi. If you don't have accessible Wi-Fi, it's the district's responsibility to make sure you do. They're responsible to make sure your child has access to distance learning through a device and through Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Okay, they got money for that, lots and lots of money. So so it's not, like Liz said, we don't feel, we're not saying, okay, well, I'm not gonna say anything because I feel bad. It's a bad situation. No, your child has already lost a year of education. And if and like I said, the parents that don't stand up, learn how to ask for these things, learn how to write letters, learn how to hold virtual IEP meetings and hold them accountable, your child is not going to be educated, and it's going to continue to regress further and further behind. Our kids are already behind. That's why they're on an IEP. Very few kids, there are kids that are academically at grade level and they have other issues going on, why they have an IEP, but very small percentage. Most kids on IEP are a year, 2, 3, 4 years behind academically, and closing the gap to get them up to grade level is extremely difficult to do. It only can happen if you know how to advocate, you know how to hold your teachers accountable to working on those goals and your child making progress. So, this is a really bad situation we're in, parents. And that's why I keep saying, if ever it was that you wanted to learn to advocate, now is the time to do it, because our kids are not going to get an education. And our kids are being marginalized because general ed kids, like I said, they can adapt better to this situation with technology and being home, but they're struggling. So how the heck are our kids going to get anything, any kind of access, any kind of educational benefit, if we don't advocate and protect their rights? Because they are not going to educate special ed kids. They're just not. They're not going to implement the IEP because it's going to be a lot of work. They're going to have to change things, and they don't want to change. They don't want to change the way they don't want to learn technology. They don't want to get on virtual and teach, Now, and it also, there's so many variables to all of this, because, I do know some service providers that are doing a great job, speech and language pathologists that are getting online and providing virtual services. And then there's some that aren't doing it at all. So of course, I'm talking about the ones that aren't doing it at all. I'm not talking about the ones that are doing a good job. Okay, same with teachers, same with, all of it. And even, adapt. I used to say, oh, well, how are they going to provide like APE services? Because how's that going to happen? Well, the other day I was on a teacher's Zoom training that the APE teachers were there, and they were saying they figured it out. And they're doing live Zoom calls with their ball, showing the kid, okay, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to practice on, or whatever it may be, the goal, they're doing it online. So now even APE services are being provided online. So all these things can happen virtually. There's no reason why any service, goal, or accommodation cannot be provided. If you have an ABA aid and a behavioral aid, or even a district aid, those aides should be online working with your child to access the curriculum and do their job. If you have an aide and they're not providing you services, that's non-implementation of the IEP too. So every single thing that's on your child's IEP should be implemented. Okay.
I have a question, Valerie.
Yes.
For my son, for his SAI, it's really nothing, to be honest. He's pretty much general ed, but he was getting SAI during a STEAM rotation, which is like art, music, whatever else they do, robotics, because he was like aggressive towards other students, especially during PE.
Okay.
And so it's only like 30 minutes. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what the girl was doing. So I guess that would be my first question. But how would she provide a service like that online? Because now when he's home, he's having trouble with writing and all this other stuff that I'm sitting there having to, prompt him and not argue, but try to get him to complete these assignments. Can't she be the one doing that with me? Or him?
Well, if you have SAI, that means they're working on goals. So you would look at the goals that are being worked on in SAI, and that's what she should be working on virtually.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. So all that time that she didn't provide, they owe you that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going to be writing your letter very, very soon. We're going to be doing, now that I got the records, but I still didn't get all the records, like you said.
No, you didn't. It was very incomplete cum file.
Yep. So now I'm going to have to ask the district to send it. So.
Well, even El Dorado though, that was very incomplete, because where there was no assessments in that cum file. It was just a bunch of IEPs. There was no psych ed, there was no speech, there was no OT, there was nothing.
Yeah, that's because they probably obviously never got it. They don't have it.
Well, so even their own though. Where's their own assessments that they completed?
Oh, that's right.
That's not even in his cum file.
Yeah, well, that's a compliance complaint right there, that they didn't provide us with the full file.
Yep.
Yeah, Yep. I think what happened was, because I said you're past the 5 days. So this is another thing, parents, you should know. So, if you ask for, this goes back to the timelines again. So we asked for a request for records, and it went past the 5. It's 5 school days. They have to get you your records. This is in California. They have to get you records within 5 school days. They didn't. So then I wrote I went over the head of the program specialist, and I said, or she's a coordinator, I guess. And I went over her head and I told her boss, hey, I made this request and we didn't get it. So within 1 day, we got it. So it sounds to me like they just rushed to get it together because they knew they were late. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they rushed or what the reason why they didn't give us a complete cum file. They didn't give us a complete cum file. And that's a violation. When you ask for a records request, that means everything. Yeah. And they didn't give us everything.
Is it normal for it to become digitally?
They do that now because, we're in such a digital age, but you can still ask for the hard copy. I always ask for, I'd love to have it, so I can just have it in my computer for that case. But then I also want the hard copy because I take that to IEPs with me. So I ask for both.
Oh, and do we pay for that, or they have to pay?
No,
No.
you do not pay for it.
Okay.
Now, the only time they might ask for you to pay for it is if you ask for it, more than once. So they're gonna, they're gonna be happy to copy it and give it to you once. But then if you ask for it again in a year or two, they're gonna go, well, we just gave it to you a year or two ago. We're not gonna do that again. So if you want to pay for it, we will. So, but if it goes, years past that time, you can ask for it again. They might say something about it that they already gave it to you. But if that happens, what you can do is you can say, I want the CUME file from the day that it ended from my last request up to the current date, because you didn't ask for that one yet. So you can get that part.
I get one every year. Every year I get one.
The entire file?
No, from the last request.
Right. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. Yeah.
And there's always missing stuff, always.
Mm-hmm. It's always what?
Missing stuff documents, always missing stuff.
I can't hear you.
You said it's always missing stuff.
Always missing stuff. Yeah, I know. Yeah, they do it on purpose. So
I'm sorry, they always are missing the team action notes. Always.
Yeah, because it has confidential stuff they don't want you to see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and as you know, Barbara, so when those things happen, you can ask for a public records request because it's much more, strong. It's a stronger request, and they're much more scared of a public records request violating it by not giving everything.
Not in San Diego. They don't. That's why I have to have a different attorney to deal with public record requests.
Yeah.
They reject everything. So it's bad both ways.
Yeah. Well, when they don't give the public records request, then that's also a violation that you can write a complaint on them for that, and they'll get held accountable. I don't think anyone's ever probably done that, held them accountable.
Not in San Diego. I'm the first one, and that's why I'm not very popular here.
Right. That's why they keep doing it, because once you start writing compliance complaints, which I'm also going to be teaching in the membership program, I'm going to be teaching parents how to write a compliance complaint, because the more compliance complaints parents write, the more we can hold them accountable, and maybe they'll, think twice before they just keep violating your rights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who else has a question?
Valerie, I'm just wondering, when we go back and we have our continuance at the beginning of the year, our IEP, what will we actually, we'll be talking about distance learning, but we can't really talk about goals because, we can't really implement them because we're not going to really be at school. It'll be a distance learning. So what will we be talking about at the continuance?
No, that they have to implement the goals, Liz.
So if we decide we want new goals, that would be the time to say the goals we want, and then they will be implemented right away?
Yes.
Okay.
Goals should start the first day of school, working on goals. Whatever goals are in the IEP right now, they have to start working on them. IEP has to be implemented from the first day of school.
Okay. And then we should discuss the distance learning and what that needs to look like.
Yes. And so you would talk about, that you want your services. You want the goals implemented. You want the accommodations implemented. And you're going to ask them, how are the goals going to be implemented? How is my child going to receive individualized instruction with implementation of goals? And you need to get them to specifically talk about these things, because that's what they're not doing.
Right.
That's what they're not doing. Mm-hmm. And talk about your request for, the services you want to be made up. How are they going to move forward with providing those services virtually? Say, I want to schedule, for when the services will be implemented. I want to schedule for when my teacher's going to get online and teach virtually. I want to know when the accommodations are going to be worked on, how they're going to be worked on, how the goals are going to be worked on, and set your virtual up to what you want it to look like, so they write it in the IEP.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would be through distance learning, and when we return, how is it also going to look like, right?
Well, when we return, then it's business as usual, going back to implementation of the IEP the way it always has been. And then if it's a hybrid model, then they have to do it properly during the virtual time as well, which they're not doing anything right during the virtual time.
Now, Valerie, if we're asking for compensatory services from what they lacked, during distance learning, at school, like you said, the aide, she was, she didn't exist at all during distance learning. How would they make that up? How are they going to make OT up? How are they, through when we go back? Can I say, well, he only had 2 sessions of speech. Can they make it up having 5 days a week? Can they do that?
Yes, they have to figure it out. They have to make it up during other times. They if the child gets 2 days a week on the IEP and they missed all these services, then they're going to have to give them 5 days a week of speech until it's made up, or however they're going to do it, but they have to make it up. And this is a good opportunity for parents, though, for you to ask for private compensatory, to say, well, I'll make it easy on you, because just think, they're not going to be able to do that. They won't have enough service providers to make up all this comp time, right? Yeah. It's not going to work. So they will be approving private agencies to make up the time. So if you don't want your kid pulled out constantly to make up service at time, you can say, I want to take my child to a private agency to make up the time. And then you're going to get real services, because you're going to go to a private agency where you're going to see real progress for your child, because it's not going to be a district provider.
So can we ask for that then?
Yeah.
I would prefer to be it, a private provider than, because I don't feel it's going to happen at school. So.
Or you can just say, you feel that it was going to be harmful for your child to be pulled this much to make up all of these services, and therefore you're requesting a private provider provide the compensatory services. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
But remember that it has to be a provider that's a non-public agency approved provider.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So did all of you parents catch that? Because that's you got the perfect opportunity now to get them to fund and pay for a private provider.
One quick question, Valerie. If the child is supposed to have a triennial back in February and they haven't done the assessment, now they're saying they're not going to do the assessments until we go back to the brick and mortar, like a regular school.
They can't do that.
They did. They said it in the email. That's exactly what they said.
But I don't care. Did you hear what I said earlier about assessments? Timelines were not waived.
Okay.
So your response would be, I'm sorry, but timelines, assessments are still in place, and we requested an assessment. Therefore, you're violating the assessment timeline.
Okay.
And that you expect the assessment to move forward. They're doing assessments everywhere virtually. That's how they're doing it. That's how they have to do it. like I said, they can go over the 60 days a little bit. It's flexible because it is a little more difficult. So it might take a little more time, but they can't just waive it and say, we're not doing it until schools reopen. No, that's a violation of IDEA. Assessments were not waived because schools are closed. So this is what I'm saying, parents, when districts, this is exactly a perfect opportunity to show you. Districts will say whatever they can. If you're going to buy it, then they're going to give it. They can't just say, we're not doing this or that until schools open. Violation. They have to do everything the same now. It doesn't matter that schools are closed. That is what is enforced right now. IDEA remains in effect. So when they tell you that, you're going to know, oh, Valerie said that they can't do that. And that is a violation. They can't just waive an assessment until schools open. You can say, you are violating the assessment timeline. We are requesting that the assessment move forward. And that's how you would respond to that. And then you'll get their response back. If they respond back again saying, nope, we're not doing assessments till school reopens, boom, you have a perfect compliance complaint, a violation of assessments. And you take that evidence that they wrote in black and white and incriminated themselves by writing that, and you file a compliance complaint. And it's going to come back holding them accountable for violating assessment timelines.
Thank you.
Okay.
Valerie, on June 2nd, I asked for IEEs, and I got a response that I would get a response. Remember, it was June 2nd, and I still haven't heard anything.
Yep. Now that is a little different because school closed.
Okay.
Right. So they are not going to be held accountable to responding to you. That's why I was surprised when she said she would. I said, oh, she's being nice because she really doesn't have to yet.
Yeah.
And they don't have to until the first day of school begins again. That's when the calendar, the clock starts again. Then you have to get it. You start from the day that you requested, and within 15 days, not counting the days of school of summer, then you start the timeline again.
Okay.
Yep. And then you should get your response
Okay.
within 15 days of that date.
Got it.
Yep. Yeah. And I know what they're going to say, Liz. They're going to say, oh, we're not doing this, because I know CNUSD is going to say that, because that's what they're saying. And that's going to be a violation. And we're just going to chalk that up to another issue on your compliance complaint that we're going to write.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else have any clarifications or questions?
I just actually wrote to you that I went through JJ's IEP and highlighted all of what you just said, who's supposed to be providing the service. Mm-hmm. And I just realized that 30 minutes of SAI is not sufficient enough to meet any of these goals. If she's just doing 30 minutes of SAI, she's like on 5 of my son's goals, and they're only giving him 30 minutes of SAI. That's not enough time.
Well, unless all the general ed teachers are working on the goals, but I doubt it.
They're not. The general ed teacher is only one goal.
Well, yeah. So, yeah,
okay.
That's what they did.
Okay.
That's what they did.
Thank you.
Because you guys, goals drive services. Okay. So if you have 2 goals, then okay, 2 goals can be done and worked on, and reasonable to meet a goal, 2 goals in 30 minutes. Yeah. If you have 6 or 7 or 8 goals, no, that's going to take at least an hour to an hour and a half of services to work on and meet 6 or 7 or 8 goals.
Yeah, because I have on here persons responsible, like on one of his goals. Yeah, speech is on there, but so is the special education staff. So shouldn't they both be working on the goal?
Whoever says persons responsible. But the thing is that the person that wrote the goal that's really responsible, that the person that wrote the goal, that's the person responsible to meeting the goal. When they tag on other people responsible, they're not responsible to meet the goal. It's the speech and language goal. It's the speech and language path that's responsible. The reason they tag it on is because everybody should be working on that goal too.
Yeah.
But they're not responsible to meet the goal. But it's best practices, and it makes most sense that all these other people should also be working on that goal.
Well, then in that case, he's in STEAM and she's babysitting him because there's no goal to help him that she's addressing herself. So I need to question what she's really doing with him then.
Yeah, if she doesn't have any goals that she specifically wrote and is responsible for, which should be all the academic goals. All the academic goals should be her responsibility.
Well, there's
Special ed
one. There's only one, and that's on his but this is a sucky IEP still anyways, but it's only on sight words.
That's the only academic goal you have?
Yeah. Everything else is speech and language. I've got an OT.
So are you telling me that your child is at grade level academically?
That's what they told me. Yeah, apparently he can write by himself. I can stop now. At our IEP meeting, the special ed teacher held it up and said, "Oh, look, he can write this by himself," but he can't even do that when he's here at my house. Yeah. So they lied. And I told him, you lied. He can't barely write. I have to write everything out for him, and he has to copy it.
Well, it goes to everything else too. Reading. Wait, now let's see. He's 6?
Yeah, he's 6. He's young.
Okay. So, but it's still going to be colors, numbers, counting, sounds, all of those things. He should be at grade level. And
comprehension.
Yeah, Liz, what else would be for a 6-year-old?
Oh yeah, definitely reading comprehension, fluency, math, everything in math. You know, he should have all those academic. If he's below level in all those areas, he should have all those should be written.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we'll find out by looking at the assessments and the assessment scores, even though, I don't really trust those assessments because they're not very good assessments, but that's what we have. So that's what you go by legally, is looking at the current assessment scores, which is what goals are based off of, are the standardized scores. That's a good point, you guys, because if you don't have an accurate and complete and honest assessment, the whole rest of your IP is screwed, because everything is based off of the assessment, everything. So the assessment drives the goals. It's how the goals are developed, and your present levels of performance for the child, which drives the goals, and the goals drives the services. And the services drive the placement. So if you don't have a very accurate, complete assessment, then nothing else is going to be right.
And don't trust their assessment.
No.
You're the parent. You know what your child does best. You need to say, no, I disagree. That's not correct. And you know what I've been doing lately is I write the goals. I've learned how to write goals. I researched how to write goals. And now I'm starting to write the goals, and I'm saying, this is how I want it written, because they will cut and paste goals.
Yes.
And it won't be specific to your child.
Yeah.
And so I go in and I say, this is how the goals should be written. And then they say, oh, okay. And they write it the way I'm asking for it to be written. And when they do write goals, because I'm an educator, and I go in there and they tell me, okay, this is the goal we did, and they're partially met. And I don't even understand what the goal says. And I don't even understand how, okay. Yeah. So you know what? I stop the whole meeting and I say, show me how you work with my son to achieve this goal, and show me what it means, because I have no idea what you're doing. And how am I going to help my son at home on his goals when I don't even understand the goal? So I want you to go through each goal, and I want you to tell me how you do this goal and what it means. And they have to go through each goal and show me exactly how they teach my child. That way I can go home and do the same thing. So you really need to understand those goals. And if you don't understand the goal, have them explain it to you. And if you don't like it, you tell them to change it.
Yep.
Well, I'm looking at his MAP scores just because that's like the testing that they do. And so like, I guess I'll send this to you too, Valerie, and because I have trouble understanding what are these scores, but I think he's below average in reading.
Well, 100 is average. So anything below that starts going below.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. 100 is always average. So 100 is the norm for most kids walking around have an average score of 100. So anything above 100, this is a standardized test score. So anything above 100 is going to get a little bit above. Then anything above 110 to 115 is going to be above average, far above average. And so anything below like 85, then you start getting below average. And anything below like 80, it's deficit range. And anything below that is severely deficit range.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys, well, it's 6:16, so we did good. And so our kids are essential, and we need to hold our districts accountable, you guys. I hope that the ones of you that are on will join the parent brigade that haven't already joined, so you can learn how to hold your district accountable and get this stuff done, so you make sure your child has a good education next year, because I'm concerned, you guys, with what the options we have. They're not good. So we got to make sure that they are obligated to teach our children, because they are skating by with the most they can get by with. And that's going to happen unless we hold them accountable. So thanks, you guys, and make sure you ask me questions for next week, and stay well, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Valerie. You are essential. Just know that.
Thank you.
Guys.
You're the best.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.